It's a club heading for the Champions League with a transfer budget that's almost negligible. It's got a wage budget that needs some adjustments. And we have a squad where the contracts are expiring in 12 months. What if we had to take over at Atletico Madrid? My name is Daljit. Welcome to the show. There are several issues with Atletico Madrid when you first join. The first problem you're going to find out very quickly is the transfer budget and the wage budget. Then when you look over at the players, you'll discover that a few of the players, including Philippe, their only defender who's got jumping reach in excess of 15, his contract expires in 2022. And when you dig a bit deeper, your backroom coaches, understaffed. You need to go out and strengthen that department if you want to do well. So this is going to be a three-parter. The first part is where I actually dive into the club. We take a look at the squad, we analyze the team, and then we try and figure out what kind of a system is ideal for that club on the game Football Manager. And on the second episode, we'll talk about how we might adapt the system. And on the final episode, we'll share the results across an entire season. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to join me on Daljit's Moments. I stream that 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. On Wednesdays, you can bring your own tactics onto the show. We have a segment called Bring Your Tactics, where I play with your tactic and I offer suggestions. Sometimes I don't even have to because your tactics are so good. Even I want to use them. And on Tuesdays and Saturdays, we have Fantasy Draft. Sometimes even on Fridays over on Twitch. Please follow my social media accounts. You'll find me updating when we are about to start. We normally start at 2 p.m. London. And don't worry if it's your first time. A lot of people have become hooked. The club doesn't have much of a transfer budget. If you're going to extend the contracts of some of these key players like Philippe, we're going to have to move that transfer budget into the wage budget and then offload one player, try and bring in another central defender to the club. Hopefully we can afford him. There is one central defender that's not too expensive. His name is Nikola Katic. I always turn to him when I need a $6 million defender. He's my $6 million man. And we should then be able to set up a tactic with this team, create their training schedules, and off we go. We check the train. There's a lot of space for coaches. They've got no performance analysts. You can look at the level of the coaching team. This is quite bad. We can get 6 coaches in. So what we'll do is we'll hire 6 coaches. To bring in Nikola Katic, we'll need to offload at least one player. So what we're going to do is try and understand what kind of tactical systems this team can play. The first time I came to the Atletico Madrid squad, I was confused because the first recommendation we get is right when we start the game, and it's a back 5 system. And then when we go and create the tactic, the tiki-taka is recommended. It's a 4-3-3. Their wing play is actually a 4-4-2. And their fluid counter-attack is another 4-3-3. So what is the reason why they're making these kind of recommendations? The first thing I do when I play Football Manager, I need to know how many options I have in central midfield. When I'm looking at this team, their central midfield is not bad because they've got Jeffrey Kondogbia. He can be a solid option as a ball winner. We've also got Hector Herrera, another player that can play as a box-to-box midfielder or a ball winner. Then we've got Koke. He is, of course, a player that can play in several positions and several roles. He can also be a ball winner. He can also play as a playmaker. Then we've got Marcos Llorente. Now, this is one of my favorite players on Football Manager because he can play in multiple roles across the pitch. In a pinch, he can play as a central defender, most likely a libero. And then he can play down the flanks as a wingback. He can play further up the pitch as a playmaker. He can play as a box-to-box midfielder. You want a ball winner? Yep, you can call on him as well. So this is a player that gives us plenty of options. So if I'm looking at midfield, central midfield, they've got at least 4 solid options. And if we need to, we can even use Rodrigo de Paul in central midfield as another playmaker. In defense, I can understand why the assistant manager recommended the 4-3-3. They really only have one defender in Philippe, and his contract is expiring in 2022. Jose Jimenez and Stevan Savic, now they're not very strong in the air. It becomes paramount that we actually go out and extend the contract of Philippe and perhaps bring in another central defender. If Philippe gets injured, we're going to have to depend on Jose Jimenez and Stefan Savic to hit the ball away. Their jumping reach is only 13. That means that the vast majority of players in the league can outjump them and, score from the near post. Because Loriente can be played as a wingback, and we've got Kieran Tripper and Sam Vasalko. They're both about the same age. We're going to probably offload Vasalko and see whether a team will come and pay money for him, because we need some transfer funds if we're going to bring in another central defender. When I'm looking at strikers for this team, we kind of hit a roadblock because we've got Luis Suarez. He's definitely an option going forward, but he's at the age of 34. We're going to have to rotate him. We can't expect him to finish an entire season on his own. So probably halfway through the season, maybe even 50 games in, he will need to be rested. That means that we're going to be rotating Antoine Griezmann with Luis Suarez. So this is going to be our option, right? So we can only use one striker. And if I'm looking at all the other strikers options, João Felix is more of a winger or a shadow striker. Angel Correa, this is another winger, playmaker. He is somebody that can play through the middle as an attacking playmaker. You got Rodrigo de Paul, another one of those attacking playmaker, quasi-winger sort of players. Of course, we got Loriente, who can play anywhere. Cunha, another one, a player that can drive through the center. He's pretty young. There's room for him to develop. Another attacking midfielder. Yes, we are down to a one-striker system with Atletico Madrid. We want to play a back five system and get some of that famous Atletico Madrid defensive resilience into it. So when I'm thinking of creating a 5-2-2-1, this is the general shape I've come up with for this team. Now, I think that this team could be very well suited to playing like this. The reason we can have a poacher in front. This poacher can be told to tackle harder, mark tighter. Here we can tell this guy to do the same thing. We can tell the shadow striker to mark tighter, tackle harder. So we get a very strong press. We want them to prevent short goalkeeper distribution in front. This is fantastic against teams that are like a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. When they play the ball out of defense, they're just going to pounce on the back line because the goalkeeper will have problems playing the ball out from defense. Every time he tries to play the ball out of defense, we're going to have two players sitting on their defenders. And then there's going to be a whole there's going to be a lot of traffic to their central midfielders, forcing them to go wide, which means we want these guys to mark tighter and tackle hard, and close down more. So we will get these guys to pounce on any ball that's been played out wide. Then in midfield, we're going to use the DLP ball-winning midfielder combination, which means that our opposition instructions are pretty standard. We'll encourage all the teams to play inside. All the wing-backs will be forced inside because every time they get the ball, the first thing we want our players to do is close down those pressing angles, set up those pressing angles so that they're forced inside. So fullbacks will be forced inside. Wingers, on the other hand, we want to keep them out wide, drifting out wide, forcing them to cross the ball. I mean, you could force them inside as well, but the problem when you force them inside, wingers, when the wingers are coming inside, they're going to be pulling these two guys out of the way. So they can easily pull these two out of position. So what I really want to do is get them to stay down the flanks. These guys will track them and make it harder for them to cross. Now, this means that we have a setup where we are playing with ball-winning defenders. I'm going to tell them to stay a bit wider. Why am I not using... I don't want to use the wide centre-back because the wide centre-back, he's got another option here. If I play with a wide centre-back, he's going to cross from deep. It can be an option for some setups. They will drift a bit wide, right? And then from this position, they will look for early crosses. The problem is if we do these early crosses, this kind of removes the wingback. The wingback becomes a threat much higher up the pitch. It's definitely something to consider in some of the matches. But for now, what we'll do is we'll keep it simple. We'll have like a ball-playing defender or a central defender, and we'll tell him to stay wider. Okay, this is a very simple fix. So they'll be told to stay wider, and then we got a central defender here. I'm not going to play with a central defender because I think that we can actually push up with a libero. This will give us in transition a 2. This is the shape that it will take in transition with these players punching forward in transition. So generally when I'm in moving the ball from defense to midfield, we will see the libero pushing up into this slot. These two are going to anchor midfield. Then the wing backs will be pushing up into these positions very high up the pitch, which allows these players who are already staying wider to play balls down the line if they need to. If they can, they will probably do that as well. So what I'm going to do here is going to hit early cross shoot on side for some of the matches. We're going to have an underlap instruction. This underlap instruction is interesting because the way it's set up in Football Manager, which I kind of love. I mean, I'm enjoying underlaps because what underlaps do, firstly, whenever you don't have wingers, is the widest player always holds up the ball looking for somebody on the inside making those runs. So when they make those runs, the widest players are looking for players on the inside, and these are the 2 players on the inside. So that's gonna benefit us. All right, so we've got libero, we got 2 defenders, we got 2 wing backs on attack, 2 anchors here. Basically, this is a static anchor. This is just gonna help him out in defense. Mentality, I'm probably going to start positive for most of my matches. I'm not going to have the underlap as a default, and I'm probably going to start default on regroup. This is probably the way I'm going to set it up. Now, to play players like Correa, Carrasco, because there are going to be times when I'm going to be faced with formations that are probably sitting back a bit too much. I may need to apply more pressure down the specific flank. Then I can move this player out, and he can be a winger. Right, so we can play him as a winger, or we can even play him as an inside forward, and then this will put a lot more pressure here. Then the underlap makes a lot of sense. Automatically, we'll play with an underlap, and this player could be an underlap, or I can just change him to an inverted wingback on attack. So he drives into this area. He's protected by the ball-winning midfielder, and this is a central defender that stays a bit wider. He holds his pocket. So this is a nice little setup that we can have. The question is this role. If this player moves into channels, it means that, I mean, I'm going to have to try this out in a few matches. Move into channels, he tends to drift over in these areas. It's kind of cool, but it will make the poacher the focus of most of the attacks. When this role drifts into the channels, he actually supports this role more effectively. But this is probably going to be one setup. And the other setup is probably going to be a lot more simpler, playing like a 5-2-2-1. At the start of the season, we were one of the worst coach teams in the land. We've managed to add some more staff, coaches to our roster, and now we're looking pretty solid. We've also brought in We've also brought in one player. Nicolo Katic has joined the squad for 4.7 million. We have no more money. We have about 205,000. That's about it. And wage budget is pretty okay at the moment. So financially, we're in a decent position. Our squad now has an extra defender. I was hoping to get one more defender and make it 5, but we're going to avoid that for now. I mean, of course, we can bring Loriente and ask him to play as a central defender too. Apparently, that man Loriente can play a lot of positions. So if push comes to shove, we'll just ask him to be a libero at the back. That can also be done. I'll push him into this position occasionally. There is no issue with this is one of the reasons why I love using Loriente in Football Manager 22. As far as training is concerned, this is my calendar. It's pretty straightforward. You've seen my videos. You should know by now what I do. This is the balanced training schedule, and then I have 2 games. Then we'll just do attacking, movement, defensive shape, something like this, and we'll cover. I don't know, make sure our players don't get injured. Then once we gain tactical familiarity, expect it to happen in October. Then they'll switch to a complete training schedule, and they stay on it all the way until the end of the season. As far as the training for the individual squad players, it'll be pretty straightforward. Most of them are training in some specific roles. Like Carrasco, I want him to be trained as a trequartista because I want those attributes to improve. I think these are the attributes I want to aim for. As far as work rate, he has low work rate, 12 for work rate. I don't expect that work rate to suddenly explode right at the age of 27. The other thing is, here we've got some players who are heavy, right? Their workload. I'm going to be tracking them during the season as well. For the youth team, they're all going to be training on the roll. So when I create the tactic, the youth team will be playing the same tactic. However, in this particular case, the youth team is only playing with this tactic. I'm going to make sure the youth team is locked into this tactic so they don't change the tactic. And in this sense, I think this will be good for the team in the long run. Our first game of the season was against a formation I expected to give us some issues, the 4-3-3. We traveled away to Sevilla. In the first half, I didn't make any changes. We struggled. In fact, Sevilla were the ones knocking on the door. They got off to an early lead. I had to make some changes at the start of the second half, including hitting early crosses, and that's when the whole game turned around. In our second match of the season, we played Barcelona, and our wingbacks who are positioned high up the pitch are a very potent threat. The pressure that our front line puts on opposition defenses sometimes forces them to clear the ball, and when they do, if we can build up the attack, that hit early cross and shoot onside can be very, very strong against attacking teams. We've already played a few matches. My plan now is to quickly play all the way to December and then stop. At that point in time, we're going to evaluate how our team has done. I've got a bad feeling about João Felix. I don't think we're getting the best out of him. So on the next episode, our plan is to dive a bit deeper into the tactics. I'm going to explain what I do during matches to adapt to different situations. We're also going to take a look at some of the formations the opposition play against me. What do I do in that case? I hope you enjoyed today's show and found it useful. Don't forget, I stream 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You can always pop in on Dalgit's Moments. That's the channel I stream on. You can ask me any kind of questions. I'll try and help you out. On Wednesdays, of course, you can bring your tactics in from Bring Your Tactics. That's the show where we play with your tactics. So meanwhile, I want to thank you for all your support. I hope you take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.